Hello, everybody. It's John Browning with the Building Your Life podcast. We're back again this week. We have a special guest with us. Her name is Holly Morphew, and she has a book out there. And this is not just Amazon bestselling. Like, I'm an Amazon bestseller, but are you in New York? Is that right?
It's on Bankrate's top 10 personal finance books of 2022. The book was published in 21, and last year in 22, it went to Bankrate's top 10 personal finance books of the year.
See, people, this is really cool. This is not some like I decided to publish a book and it's out there. This is somebody who has gotten a lot of recognition and for good reason. Because Holly, I got your book. Thank you for sending it. Show everybody a picture of that in case they're watching on YouTube. And by the way, if you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing out, because here's a picture of the book. And it's called Simple Wealth, the practical guide to transform your relationship with money and live in abundance.
Yes, because isn't that the point, right? Why do we work so hard if not to create a life of design?
See, it's and those of you who are familiar with my podcast, is called the Building Your Life podcast. And I talk a lot about some of the nuts and bolts of investing and that type of thing. But we also really touch on the idea of what my book is about, which is build a life, not a portfolio. And the two books mesh really well. But I will say, if you had the choice between one or the other, and especially if you're kind of maybe a little bit younger, you're kind of just starting out, or very important or here, maybe you're somebody who's had a setback and you're feeling really discouraged, like there's no way out, this is impossible, I can't, all those words that sabotage our lives and our relationship with money. You need to get Holly's book. I love I'm just going to say one thing. I promise I won't read the whole book, but it's right up front. It's kind of in the very beginning. She says that building wealth requires a unique combination of strategy, mindset, and behavior, with strategy 20% and the other 80% mindset. That's just a fun quote from the book, and it's kind of in towards the very beginning. And if you're like me, you're going to have a lot of underlines in this book and a lot of dog ears, because I want to go back to some of these things. But tell us a little bit, Holly, about sort of what got you started. What made you think this is what I want to do with my life, right?
I have my own wealth journey story. Actually, that is how I became a financial coach, is because, early on in my career, I went through the Great Recession of 2008. And I remember watching my portfolio, lose over, a third of its value. And I thought, gosh, I don't want this to happen when I am ready to retire myself, that my financial independence number, 25 times your annual expenses. That's always, in personal finance, we start at the end and we work backwards. And so I'm thinking, gosh, if I save my financial independence number by the time I'm ready to stop working, and I see that number go down, a third of its value or lose half of its value, well, I'm not going to feel very good about that. And so that's when I really started thinking about, what does a financial advisor like yourself help us do? And what do I do as a financial coach? Because they're very different. And I see that, a financial advisor and a financial coach working together hand in hand, because there's a big gap between working with someone who's helping you invest money that you already have in a way that you're not so worried about your portfolio losing its value, right? There's
Right.
so much strategy in investing itself and so much to know. And that's why I always say, once you get to a certain point, start working with a financial advisor who is studying the market and really is sophisticated in helping you get those high returns. Versus what I do as a financial coach is I help you create more money to invest, starting where you are financially today. And that is because when I was 20 years old, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness,
Hmm.
and my medication was $5,000 a month, John.
Wow.
So on the one hand, I feel really blessed that I grew up in a family where we talked about money at the dinner table. So I had a really good kind of start right out of the gate in my working life, knowing where to put my dollars so that they were growing. But on the other hand, I knew that I was accumulating a ton of debt because of the medication, but also it got to a point where I realized that I wasn't paying attention. I had a ton of financial anxiety. I got to a point where I was living paycheck to paycheck. And I had this experience where at the time I drove a Honda Accord and my office was 40 miles from my house. And we had 3 back-to-back snowstorms in Colorado where I live. And I called my boss and I said, I think that if I drive into work today, I will be risking my life. And she said, well, Holly, if you don't come in, you're fired. And I thought,
Wow.
what am I going to do? Like here, everyone's thinking, oh, Holly, she's successful. She has the house and the job and the lifestyle and the car and, all the things. And I realized what I truly had was a boatload of debt.
Mm-hmm.
So that was
Who are you
that,
working for? Why are you working?
exactly, like what is the point of, all these hours that are going into this job? And I worked in real estate at the time. My first 6 years of my corporate career, I worked in real estate. And so I did make it to work and home that day, and I decided to look at my money for the first time, like really look at my money. And so I got out my credit card statements and I added up my balances, and I had $67,000 of credit card debt. And I was living paycheck to paycheck. So that's where my wealth journey began. I started to study everything that I could get my hands on about passive income, entrepreneurship, wealth management, debt elimination, personal finance, and I created a system. And I applied that system to my personal finances. And 3 years later, I was completely debt free. And then shortly after
How
that,
many years later?
3 years later,
Okay, everybody do the mental math on that. $67,000 in debt, credit card debt, which is accumulating, not just accumulating, but compounding against you in 3 years. Is it possible to do that?
yes,
Yes.
it's 100% possible. Yes. And that's what I want to, this is what I teach and preach, is that no matter where you are on your financial journey, living paycheck to paycheck, don't have savings, want more money to start putting into investments every month, you can do it. I started with just looking at what are my expenses every month and what can I trim. And so reducing or eliminating unnecessary expenses. And I was like racehorse blinders on, laser beam focus, going to debt free, because I knew that once those minimum payments went away, plus what I was putting towards my debt, I'd have a lot more cash flow to start putting into savings, retirement, and investment accounts. And so that's what I did. Shortly after my debt was gone, I had money in the bank. And then in my 30s, I became financially independent because I created multiple streams of income. And so that's another thing that I support my clients with is, what are your personal interests? What are your unique skills? What are your current resources? Let's monetize them. It doesn't have to be a whole business that you start, but it can be an income stream that we create for you so that you can start getting your money flowing into vehicles where it's going to grow.
Love that. I love everything that you just said. I'm going to change the subject just a little bit because I want to go back to something you said early on, because I like putting numbers on things, and I realize I don't put anybody in a box, right? So this is not a box that we're putting you in, but you had a number. You said 25 times your income. Is that
Annual expenses.
your, okay, 25 times your annual expenses is a good sort of ballpark target, bullseye, so to speak, that you say have this to be financially free. Unpack
Yes.
that a little bit for us.
Yes. And thank you for bringing this up, John, because I think this is really important. This number, 25x your annual expenses, is based on a lot of research over the years on average market returns and how long we live. And so the idea is that once we've saved 25 times our annual expenses, we can withdraw 4% of that a year and not outlive our money. Now, again, of course, this is a ballpark because you're in the market every day, John, so you're seeing the numbers, but the idea is that if we're willing to look at our current lifestyle and know what our lifestyle is costing us, then we can easily project what our needs are for the future. And I will also say to your listeners, if you're doing this math right now in your head and you're going, oh my God, my FI number is, $3 million or whatever it is, and I'm nowhere close to that. That's exactly where I was. And so that's why I started thinking, well, what are some ways that I can reach financial independence, which is the point when work becomes a choice because the income you're receiving from sources other than a job can pay for your expenses. So that can be your investment returns, but it can also be other streams of income.
Mm-hmm. Preferably other streams of income that don't maybe require some of the same effort as a 9 to 5 job. And there are those out there, things like that. And just to, again, because I got to be nerdy here a little bit, I got to bring this in there. What if you could make that 25 times? What if you could make the investments that are supporting that produce tax-free income for you, as opposed to taxable income like your pension fund is likely taxable, your traditional IRAs, your 401k, 403b, all of those things are going to be taxable in retirement. What if you could do some planning in advance to make those tax-free? I can tell you the math on that is somewhat exponential in terms of making that number a lot more palatable.
Yes. Yes. And again, there is so much strategy, and the strategy is really important, but it's how we're managing our money to have the ability to make that strategy work for us. And so, being on the personal finance side, I'm working with people who are living paycheck to paycheck or are, overspending because they don't know where their money is going because life is so fast paced today and we're just constantly swiping and wondering, am I going to be able to pay this off? And I actually don't even teach traditional budgeting because in my experience, and I've been a financial coach now for 17 years, most people aren't going to take the time to reconcile their accounts to the dollar every month. That's just the reality of it. And so I teach spend planning and give my clients fail-proof ways to ensure that they never overspend. So if I say I'm spending $2,000 this month and that covers my gas, groceries, clothing, shopping, concert tickets, I have a strategy. Everything's strategic in the financial impact system because it does matter, right? Like,
Right.
especially when you have debt or you're living paycheck to paycheck, like I call them the little dollars. They matter so much and they can make such a big impact. So every dollar you save by having awareness around where your money is going and knowing your numbers can really impact your future for the better.
I agree 100%. And I'm going to add something to that. And I hope you don't too badly disagree because we haven't talked about this, but I would say if you like, I agree. The whole budgeting thing, and some of my friends will completely disagree with me on this, but the budgeting to the dollar is just not something most people are going to do. I frankly don't do it, and I've tried, but then you end up you give up your life, right? Because you're doing every penny and all that. Now it has become easier, right? There are programs that consolidate your statements, and you can, but it's at that awareness, right? It's just an awareness that every penny doesn't need to be accountable for, but you need to understand as you kind of get to the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of the year, where in the world has all that money gone? And these days, with streaming services and everything's a subscription, it's really easy to get to the point where you're spending stuff that you're spending on stuff that you no longer use, and it's really hard to then to figure out how to cancel. And it can be overwhelming and difficult, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not a big fan of the traditional budgeting, but I am a big fan of two things. One is, like you said, knowing where the money's going and that awareness. And I think the other thing is, if your goals are not written down, in general, they're not going to happen. You got about a 90%. I think there's been a few studies done on this. Your likelihood that you're going to get something done and accomplish your goal goes up by 90% if you write it down and put it up, not just write it down, but put it up where you can see it every single day. You
Yes.
agree with that?
Absolutely, because then you're holding yourself accountable, and no one's going to advocate for you in the way that you'll advocate for yourself, because no one knows your goals and your dreams and that you have a debt freedom goal.
Yeah, like everybody just assumes that we're all doing great because social media, we all look like everything's fine, right? But the truth is, a lot of us are walking around, especially, we're coming up when we're recording. I'm not supposed to date the podcast, but I'm going to do it anyway. We're coming up on the holidays, right? And what many people don't realize is that there's a very large percentage of people that the holidays are actually really difficult for various reasons. One of them being, though, is you get to the holidays and you realize you're broke.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest joys about being financially independent, I think for me and for a lot of people I know, is being able to give things away. That's way better than going and buying yourself something, for me. And I think for a lot of people, you should, if you haven't done that, try that whole, one of the coolest things in the world is, if you're, and you should look for random things. I was behind this wonderful young lady in the grocery store. She had two kids. I have six, so I get this. They're toddlers. They're crawling all over. They're giving her a hard time, and her credit cards aren't working. If you have financial independence, just stepping in and paying for those groceries, boom, gone. You're good. Don't worry about it. How awesome is that?
Well, and you bring up
Yeah.
a really good point, John. And giving is one of the personal practices that I write about in my book, Simple Wealth, because we're talking about living abundantly and we're talking about mindset. And the personal practices of giving, gratitude, affirmations, principles of manifestation, meditation, these things that might sound sort of esoteric, what they do is they raise your energetic state, they raise your vibration. And this is simple law of attraction. So if you're like me, where I was a few years, many years ago now at this point, but where I wanted to receive, okay, I wanted to receive money, I
Yeah.
wanted to receive financial freedom, I wanted to receive things, because I was being so disciplined with where I spent my money for those 3 years, that I knew that on the other side of that discomfort and having to say no to a lot of things was everything that I wanted. And that was true. But once I started to practice these abundance principles, like giving, I wanted to receive. So on the opposites, it's kind of like light and dark and yin and yang. These things go hand in hand. And so I thought, well, I'm going to start a giving practice, an intentional daily giving practice. And while I didn't have money to give or money to donate to a charity, what I did have was my energy, my physical, and my support, holding the door for someone, or gathering the things that I don't need and donating them, or just showing up to be a contributor. And I started to notice that as I started being intentional with my giving and looking out to who needs what I have to offer, maybe not money, but something else that I can offer to someone, I started to notice that I was receiving, to the point where I remember one day I was walking around 29th Street Mall in Boulder, Colorado, and there was a $50 bill on the ground. And I looked at it and I thought, gosh, and this was just like a week or two into my giving practice. And I thought, is this really happening? And I thought, is there going to be a string attached to this $50 bill where someone's going to like reel it in? And But no, I mean, I found a $50 bill in the ground and I did use that to pay off some debt at the time. But these practices really work. And it's astounding how your life starts to shift when you start to put your focus, intention, and energy into raising your vibration so that you can receive more, so that you do feel more grateful. And once you start to feel more grateful for the things that you already have, it's just this natural sort of law of attraction where more things to be grateful start popping up into your life. And that's the mindset piece.
The mindset piece. Is there anything else on the mindset piece that you've noticed in your experience, like something that when you start to work with someone, they have this mindset, and when you're done and you've been successful, they've had this mindset shift? Is there anything else in particular that you can think of?
Oh, completely. Completely. One of the things that I talk about a lot, especially when I'm working with clients who have that financial anxiety, which I know what that's like because I have lived it, is using our breath. Using our breath to calm our nervous system and to sort of reconnect with what is true for us. Because we live in this very noisy world where we're getting 4,000 to $10,000 ads a day coming at us.
Yeah.
That's what the average American is exposed to today, 4,000 to 10,000 ads a day. And in addition to that, because of social media and because of news and just the whole financial ecosystem, we're really being trained to spend more money. And, banks and lenders in general are in the business of giving us loans so that we can take on more debt and spend more money. So it's when we start to get really quiet with ourselves and really kind of tune in and connect with, what is it that I value? What is it that's on the other side of that financial freedom that I'm looking for? And start to feel the feelings that will come along with that before it's actually like safety. Like how would it feel to just feel safe in your body and feel safe knowing that your bills are going to get paid next month? Because once we start to tune into those actual feelings that have a vibration attached to them, that it starts to manifest in our life. It's magical.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen the transformation happen. And kudos to you for very specifically zeroing in and helping people kind of get out of the mindset, and the other thing that I call it too is a scarcity mindset. And I know elderly people that still live in a scarcity mindset, and it's like sad, right? It's like, man, that just seems kind of miserable to live in that mindset for your entire life. Um, so I'm with you. The whole idea of having in your checking account, I mean, we're not talking investments, we're talking just in your checking account. You've got a month or two of expenses. Even if you lost your job tomorrow,
Yeah.
you've got that liquid money there. I mean, that's just a wonderful feeling, and it's a feeling of freedom, and the idea that you can create multiple streams of income that you were talking about. And one of these times we got to do a whole separate podcast on multiple streams of income that makes sense for you, right? Because some things aren't going to work for me that might work for you because you have different passions, talents, abilities, perspectives, everything else. But we have to do that. We got to get together and do that one again. So
That would be so fun. I would love
we'll
to do
we'll
that.
schedule that for sure. So that all of this has been great. I want to make sure that people know absolutely real quick how's the best way, and we'll keep it in the show notes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just go down below. If you're looking at this on our website, guardianrockwealth.com, if you're looking at the podcast section there, it'll be down below there, all of Holly's information and how to get in touch with her. But just say it here so people can hear it. How's the best way to get in touch with you?
So two ways. You can find me on my website, financialimpact.com. And I have a ton of free resources that I offer on my website too. So you can get a free money date guide, and you can get a wealth strategy, which allows you to track your money there, your income, your expenses. It'll automatically calculate your financial independence number. And then you can find me on the socials at Holly Morph, Morph is my handle. So I would love to see you on the socials, and please say hi to me.
All right, that sounds good. And folks who have not ever watched the Building Your Life with John Browning podcast, the best way to get a hold of me is at www.guardianrockwealth.com in the contact us section. I pay attention to everything that comes across. All my socials are there as well. Or grab your phone, text the word life to 321-421-5213. You'll get all kinds of information, including down at the very lower right hand side of the link that you will get a way to schedule some time with me directly on my calendar. And that will not be a sales call. It will not be one of my staff. That's me. You're going to talk directly with me, and we're to see if there's a way we can help each other. And maybe the way that I can best help you is putting you in touch with Holly. So Holly, thanks for joining us today. If there was one thing that you could leave everybody with the thought in their mind, what would it be?
Every day you are either building wealth or you're not. It does not matter how much money you make. What matters is what you keep and what you do with it.
Wow. Okay, I can't add anything to that one. So thank you very much. We'll see everybody next week on the Building Your Life podcast. Holly, thanks so much again for joining us and spending your time with us today.
Thank you so much, John. It's really been a pleasure.